So recently, Marvel Comics has announced that they're going to be adding QR codes to their comic books. Once scanned, these apparently lead to a bonus scene. I guess it's supposed to be like the after-credit scenes from the movies. However, their inclusion has caused concern among fans, me included. The industry is defending the move, but obviously they would, it's their idea. And it hasn't exactly put anyone's fears to rest. This seems to have started in the X-Men comics. And it's rolling out in other comics too, where they're printing a large QR code on the last page of the book. First of all, people are worried that Marvel is holding out on some of the story, and if they don't utilize these QR codes, they'll be missing out. According to this interview with Tom Brevoort, this isn't the case, and he insists that if people choose not to use the QR codes, they won't be missing out on much. Either way, people who buy these physical copies expect to get the full story, and these scenes are plot relevant. They've also confirmed that they will be including these bonus scenes in future trades, so this is really only affecting people who buy the floppies. According to that same interview, Brevoort claims that their main concern at Marvel is that spoilers could get out, so this is a way to keep that from happening. I'm not entirely sure if this is true though, because I saw this bonus material almost immediately on Twitter. Just saying. As for this bonus scene, it was actually pretty plot relevant, introducing major characters including villains, and it comes off as a lot more plot relevant than they might want you to believe. You know, comics are pretty expensive now, with individual issues costing upwards of $5, and a lot of people expect to get what they paid for instead of having to download extra content. Personally, I think the price point has been an issue for a while. Back in the day, comics were sold for just pocket change. The original Fantastic Four issue 1 was only 10 cents. Of course, a lot has changed since then. Factors like inflation, the quality of paper they're using to print these stories, and so on and so forth. But I also think the price point has contributed to comics being more inaccessible to people. Then they have multiple variant covers available, which can be cool, but it kind of feels like they're treating comics like they're all collector's items. Do comics need to be $4 or $5? And then buying all the variant covers just adds to that cost. And I can't help but feel like putting content behind a QR code can just add to that problem by setting a dangerous precedent. I mean, just look at what happened with video games, where they're constantly squeezing money out of their fans through microtransactions and downloadable content. The last thing we need is for comics to go a similar route. And comics already are not in a great place right now, and haven't been for quite a while. We'll have to see what the future holds, but I really don't see this being a net positive. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I guess anything can happen. As a longtime comics fan, it's been really frustrating to see the industry constantly making these questionable decisions. When the MCU got really popular, I was hoping that comics would be able to capitalize it. Like when One Piece came out on Netflix, it was almost impossible to find a physical copy of the manga because it had all sold out. I know there are people that don't want a niche hobby to go mainstream, but I feel like comics just haven't been culturally relevant in a way that they could be, even with the success of the MCU. And I am glad that the Avengers have earned their place in pop culture. I just think it'd be cool if comic books as a whole could do that too. And the MCU has been on the decline ever since Endgame, which was easily the peak of the franchise. We still have some major hits like Spider-Man, which isn't surprising, and Deadpool and Wolverine just came out and that's killing it, which is again not surprising, but many of their outings have been underperforming at the box office, when for a solid decade they were basically having hit after hit. Ironically, the MCU is facing similar problems to comic books in general, where audiences are intimidated by how much of a backlog the MCU has, and confused about which shows they have to watch in order to understand what's going on in this particular movie. Whereas in comics, many people are intimidated by the huge backlog that goes back decades, so oftentimes they're not sure where to start. Now they're bringing back Robert Downy Jr. to play Dr. Doom in the new Avengers film. I understand it's a multiverse thing, but it kind of feels like nostalgia bait. I do hope the MCU can reclaim its former glory, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Another issue is just the quality of the storytelling we're getting. It's no secret in the past decade, comics have been trying to court a Gen Z audience, and it's understandable to want to bring in new readers, but the way they've been going about it is really awkward. It just screams, "How do you do, fellow kids?"
X-Men is supposed to be something that is, you know, important to the now, and so what is more now than Zoomers?
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
Like, I think it makes sense to implement social media into these stories, since it is such a huge part of modern day life, but the execution in some of these stories really misses the mark, and there are multiple examples of this throughout the comics. Like in Fire and Ice Welcome to Smallville, which I realize is supposed to be a comedy, but honestly the jokes just aren't funny. It's mostly just outdated references to internet memes. It's about Fire and Ice moving to Smallville and opening a hair salon, which I don't think is a bad idea. Trying to balance owning a small business and being a superhero can be an engaging story, while they use social media to try to advertise their business and connect with other superheroes. But the jokes just stink. Like, there's a part where Fire makes a promotional video, but she doesn't bother waiting for Ice to start filming. So she just uses a picture of Ice and she's flossing with the robot. Again, I don't think the premise is bad, but the execution just doesn't land. Then there's the New Warriors. This made the rounds way back in 2020. It was supposed to be the new Warriors for a new generation, but it ended up getting laughed off the internet. I remember people who weren't even into comic books were talking about this. It got a lot of attention because the team included characters by the names of Snowflake and Safe Space. Yeah, on top of them trying to be desperately hip with the kids, they're also not the best when it comes to political commentary. Oftentimes the politics will be really heavy-handed, like drawing classic villains with Trump's face. There's even some political commentary that's so notorious and end up getting on Know Your Meme. I'm not against having political themes in stories, but their implementation is often pretty clunky, and it comes off more like the writers just venting their frustrations about politics rather than actually saying anything meaningful. And this would probably be Exhibit A. Back in the day, Snowflake was a common insult, and they would make fun of people for wanting their safe spaces. So the team behind the New Warriors apparently wanted to take power over those insults by giving those aliases to some of their main characters. Except that would kind of be like calling a character nowadays woke as their superhero name. It doesn't really work that way, hence all the backlash and mockery. It had been 4 years with no word about the project, so many assumed it had been quietly cancelled. The only thing we did get was a cameo from one of the characters, B Negative, the only character that didn't receive a huge amount of backlash, mostly because he's just a vampire kid. Maybe not the best character, but compared to the others, he's fine. However, it recently leaked online. I haven't been able to find a full copy yet, but they are talking about it on Twitter. But based on the pages we do have, it's clear that it falls into basically every trap that they've been doing for the last 10 years or so. Desperately trying to relate to Gen Z, having poorly implemented politics, and just being awkward overall. There's a character called Screen Time who has one of the most questionable backstories. He inhaled his grandfather's internet gas. What on earth is that supposed to mean? Why didn't they just give him a more Freakazoid-esque backstory? It would have made more sense than this. For some reason, they are just not good at implementing modern technology. Freakazoid came out in the 90s, and it did better than this. Then they all go over their hobbies, again in an attempt to make them more relatable to Gen Z. An internet gas boy lists his hobbies as memes and chonkers. I'm not even sure what that means. The only thing I could think of is fat cats are often called chonkers. Is he saying he likes to make memes with fat cats? Unless I'm missing something. This whole thing clearly wasn't a good idea to begin with. It's nice that they try to do something original, but these characters are just really embarrassing stereotypes. Even B Negative, who was the most tolerable of the lot, was explicitly written to be a stereotypical goth kid, but it's better than knockoff Dora the Explorer, or the rest of the team's cringe. It is sad to see this medium, which has existed for so long, just not have the cultural relevance it could, and I think at this point they just need to make them more accessible, both when it comes to price point and where to find them, along with greatly improving the quality of the storytelling. Comics could benefit from impulse shopping, like placing them at checkout lines in grocery stores, and put them at a price where people can just pick them up and not feel guilty about it, which would probably involve printing them on cheaper paper, but I don't think it's out of the question. And frankly at this point I think it's kind of necessary, not just for cultural relevancy, but kinda just to survive at this point. Also, maybe have them more accessible to younger audiences. It does kinda seem like comics skew more towards an older audience, which wouldn't be a bad thing if there were more options. The thing is, people often associate superheroes with family-friendly content, but then there are books like Green Lantern Alan Scott soliciting prostitutes down by the docks. I mean, if they want to write a story like that, fine, but why does it have to be Green Lantern? Having family-friendly stories would make it more accessible to a wider audience, including adults. As for the time being, I'm worried about the future of comics. I really love this medium, and I just hate to see it so anemic. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to our members. Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Phil C, Taylor Ramirez, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Spam, Lucas Geis, Jay Draws, Meowsers, Sky, Philip, Isaac Martinez, Garcia XV Legend, Tobias Weller, Bandito Bane, Mac B909, Crimson Phantom, Dakari the Professor, Owen Wildish, Jen the Goblin, Datadyne Executive, Caleb Nelson, Todd McCaffrey, Killer Bomb, and Lil. Thank you all so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. And if you enjoyed this content, you can leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. I'd really appreciate the support. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.